We are working on development of a collagen matrix with local medical grade honey and some gelling agents to create a wound gel that can be applied for any wounds, like large wounds, small wounds, surgical wounds, or ulcerative wounds, and different type of wounds or burns it can be used.
Yeah.
And so now we are at the 510K stage now. So we are submitting it to the FDA.
Yeah.
And the other project that I'm working on is my kind of long-term dream of honey analysis lab.
Yeah.
So that's how we started Velocity. Yeah. So we are, we have some technical difficulties, but overall the objective is to analyze honey from anywhere in the world. We can get it and we can analyze it for biological activity components such as antioxidant, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory properties, and as well as physicochemical characteristics, and we come up with the number of biological activity level. And depending on the biological activity level, or BAL, so different honeys has different BAL values, and those BAL values will tell us if they are medical grade honey or very high medical grade honey or moderate or low. So this will help the beekeepers or the honey packers to decide or to change their prices as depending on their analysis. But also this will help for the low supply of Manuka honey from New Zealand. It is becoming lower and lower, and so there's higher demand for medical grade honey in the US. So we will be able to compensate this loss or even become the leader in the country.
So you are establishing like a standard baseline that all honeys can be assessed against. And is there like a conversion over to the New Zealand Manuka honey approach?
I mean, normally the Manuka honey is measured through...
Is it Manuka?
Manuka. Yeah, Manuka. I mean, how would you say
You're the honey guy. You tell me.
Okay. I mean, sometimes even I pronounce it differently. Yeah, but okay. So Manuka honey is the most studied, well-researched medical grade honey in the world. It's more than 30 years. It's out there. And more than 30 years it has been studied by various labs in New Zealand, Australia, Europe, Asia, in the US as well.
Why? What drew people to that honey?
So Professor Peter Mullen in early 1990s, he discovered there are a couple of different honeys that has medicinal potential or antimicrobial activity from New Zealand. And then Manuka is one of the local tribes or local, the people's honey that they use for medical purposes for hundreds of years. And then after he found out like some other New Zealand honeys, but especially Manuka honey has strong antimicrobial activity, he presented this. And then the marketers, they picked this honey as a local commodity, and then they started to promote it as medical grade honey of the world. Okay. So in 1990s, it was $20 per kilo. By early 2000, it was $2,000 per kilo. Because there is no competitor, and that was honey is out there for thousands of years, used as medicinal purposes. But for Manuka honey, because it was scientifically backed and evidence-based applications, it made Manuka honey the standard for medical grade honeys in the world. But they did some marketing tricks. Okay. Instead of making to focus only on Manuka, they did unique Manuka factor, or it was methyl glyoxal. So that's a chemical which is known as antiseptic. So it kills the bacteria with some different mechanisms, especially cell wall and cell membrane. So methyl glyoxal, the number of methyl glyoxal has been measured for each Manuka honey, and it's named as MGO. And depending on the MGO number or MGO level, the higher the MGO, the higher the antimicrobial potential of the honey. And again, it has been marketed so well, like Oprah Winfrey or Dr. Oz or Kardashians, they all use Manuka.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so does that number degrade with time?
Methyl glyoxal value doesn't go down so much, on the contrary to the hydrogen peroxide. So most of the other honeys in the world, they have peroxide activity. So which means that hydrogen peroxide is produced when you add water into the honey, and then the glucose oxidase enzyme, which is already available inside the unprocessed raw honey. So this enzyme gets activated, and then it will convert the glucose into gluconic acid and hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide it will produce oxidative stress to the cells around it. But the concentration is very low. It is strong enough to activate oxidative stress to the bacteria, but not strong enough to the human cells, because size-wise, we are at least 10 times bigger than the bacterial cells. So this peroxide activity has been well known to kill the bacteria. But methylglyoxal, or in Manuka, there is no peroxide activity. So instead of that one, it has the methylglyoxal chemical in it. And peroxide activity goes down by time because of the glucose oxidase enzyme. It's kind of getting degraded or denatured by the time. But methylglyoxal is not going into the same reactions. Yes, there is still some chemical reactions suppressing it, but not as fast as the peroxide activity.
Well, so as you're creating this kind of standard baseline that can be used on all honeys,
yes.
Are you encountering this? Like you have to find something that's stable so that time does not become a factor?
Actually, instead of going for single chemical, we are going through the activity. And this activity may change, but when the activity changes, the grading will change too. For example, we have a honey sample fresh, just from the hive, harvested last week, let's say. And it has a high biological activity level, high antimicrobial, high antioxidant, high anti-inflammatory. And then this will be considered as, let's say, high or very high biological activity level. We test it again 6 months later or 1 year later, maybe another batch, or there's some extra. And then we take it again and we measure all these activities again. If any of these activities move up and down, and they do, then we will regrade the honey, the same honey, but after time, some of the values are changed, and so we still can regrade it as medical grade honey at different levels.
Okay. Well, how does that change? I guess this is not stuff you buy at the grocery store because you're not buying it for medical. But it gives it like a shelf life that you said we've seen this sort of degradation of.
But it takes about 10 years.
10 years.
It's very hard to find
honey
in 10 years sitting on the same shelf.
Oh, interesting. How did you get into honey? How are you like, this is the thing I want to be all about?
Okay, so my PhD is cellular and molecular biology. I studied about gene therapy, which is not very relevant. But I also studied on hematopoietic stem cells. And then in my postdoc, I studied cell signaling and also studied wound repair. So basically, I studied about cleft palate. So during the embryogenesis, our palatal shells grow downward, vertical, and then they become horizontal, and they attach. So once they attach, it needs to be confluent, like a wound completely healed. If it doesn't, then as the face grows, the palatal shells separate, and we end up with a cleft on the palate. And this is usually causing major disorders in the babies. I mean, they need to be fed specially, but they also cause speech problems. They also cause, other digestive problems, or the milk goes to the lungs instead of the stomach, so it may even end up with death if it's not properly treated. So I was working on cleft palate, and I was working on the mechanism. How does the palatal shells become confluent? So that's the same mechanism with the wound healing, which is epithelial mesenchymal transition. And I was studying about epithelial mesenchymal transition. I found some papers about honey that is helping for cell migration. So those cells migrate from the attachment area to the outsides, and then they become confluent, and then they change back to the same shape again. So, and I found out honey is an ultimate wound healer used for thousands of years by every civilization on Earth. And then I said, okay, how does honey do this? How does honey control or help with the cell migration or cell differentiation? So how does the cell signaling affected? So I was reading papers about this, but meanwhile I was looking for a academic position because I was a postdoc and I need to go for more stable faculty job. So I got an offer from my home country, Turkey, and the university's president, they were visiting US for a conference, and we met there. And he offered me the position that, okay, we would like to have you as an assistant professor, but we also have a honey research center. Would you be interested in this? I said, I know about honey, but it's not my primary. I would like to study more about metastasis, or cancer, or wound healing. And he said, honey is the wound healer. So we discussed, we found a lot of North Star, like coinciding. I said, okay, I'm going to go back. So that position was very, appealing for me. And then I went to Turkey. And I become the director of Honey Research Center. And then people keep coming, visiting, especially because this was a newly established university, 2012. So I was there in 2013. So many parents and students are coming, and they were kind of putting me onto the front that I can talk about honey's medicinal value. And then I keep listening more and more from the local people that how they use honey for different diseases. And I become more and more fascinated that honey is not only for wound healing, it's for gastrointestinal disease, it's for diabetes, it is for cardiovascular disorders. So honey has become a kind of holy grail for so many diseases that's been used out there for thousands of years. And think about Hippocrates, Galen, Avicenna. These are the top leaders of the medicine and pharmacy. And so I found out they have so many recipes that they use honey for different diseases. So my love with the honey started in 2012, I would say. And since then, I keep learning and more about the honey and medical grade honey. Then when I came to the United States in 2016, I kept talking about this as a high school teacher or different jobs. And, I found out there's a lot of, like, everybody loves honey. Everybody has a connection with the bees. Like 8 billion people in the world, they all know about honey or the bees. So then, but not so many people, very few people in the world know about the true value of honey's medicinal power. So I said, I should devote myself, to let the people know honey is medicine and not every honey is created equal. Yeah. So that's how my interaction with honey started.
Wow. So what, we typically ask about margarita, but we've already talked about that. So what's the best honey?
What's the best honey? It depends on which aspect you're asking.
You're going to eat a honey. It's not for medicine. We're just going to eat honey. Okay,
just the tasting the
best honey. Yeah.
Okay, I would say local honeys are most of the best honeys available. But among the local honeys, in terms of a good taste, sweet taste, I would tell the tallow honey, but people's tastes are different. Maybe some people like the tallow honey, some people like, wildflower honey, which is very hard to differentiate. Or some people like the acacia honey. So acacia honey is a light color honey, it's a sweet honey, and it has also medicinal potential. So I may tell it's the one. But because I've usually focused on medical honey, I would say buckwheat honey, which tastes like molasses.
But that's good medicinal honey?
It's very good medicinal honey. Or spotted lanternfly honey, again, it doesn't taste so good. Yeah. Or I would say like oak honey from hill country. And again, interestingly enough, some of the oak honeys from this hill country area, they both taste good and they have medicinal value as well.
You're saying our hill country here?
Yeah, our hill country.
Yeah, well, that's
it was very interesting to find a high medical grade honey in this city. And again, as we talked earlier, nothing is random in life. And the reason that I came to San Antonio and started working about honey, I found out, I was looking for oak honey in the United States because in Turkey, we had about 400 honey samples, and among them, chestnut honey and oak honey are the highest medicinal potential. And then when I came here, I was looking where I can find oak honey in the United States, and I found it's right here in the hill country. So, it was a very interesting.
Worked out great.
Stuff.
Okay. Well,
but I can tell you one thing, like something like margarita.
Well, I was just, where the best honey is a good enough question.
I would say if you ask where is the best honey made, which is the honey alcohol. So then I would say that, again, I don't know, I don't drink, but I don't know where to find it. But honey is one of the oldest alcoholic beverage in the world. As you ferment the honey, so you end up with the mead. And different honeys have different meads because of the components inside it.
I went in Ethiopia. I had this honey drink that they make. Is it Tej? But very simple. It's awesome. Okay, so can you do a primer? We've probably been talking long enough,
recording
but I do think it would be fun. Can you give a primer on just how honey is made, like the process of a bee transfer? Yeah, because you talked about it in your lab, and it was super fun.
The bees, they are the pollinators of the world, and they are the most important organism on Earth for a sustainable human life. And other than pollination, they also collect the nectar from the bees. And there are two types of nectar. One of them is blossoms, as we know, and most of the time we see the honeybees go and collect the blossoms from various types of flowers, including the fruits and vegetables that we eat. And then they transfer them into their crop, which is the stomach only for honey processing. So the nectar is highly in sucrose sugar, and then the enzymes inside the crop, which is converting or inverting them into glucose and fructose. And then when they come back to the hive, say they do regurgitation, so basically kind of bee vomiting. So they transfer this nectar from the forager bee brings to the processor bee. And the processor bee accepts this nectar, and she does the same thing for a while, and then she transfers to another one, another one, another one. So one drop of nectar travels 200 bees crop. So basically, we are eating the vomit of 200. But that's one part. The other one is a little bit more gross, I would say. So the other nectar source of the bees is plant secretion. So there are some plants, especially oak tree, for example, they release some sweet secretions from their leaves and acorns, and bee goes and collect it. This is rich in sugar source. This is called honeydew, and another honeydew is excretion of some scale insects. For example, aphids or the spotted lanternflies. So basically, they poke into the tree and they absorb the phloem, the sap, which is very rich in sugar. But this is a very high pressure, so drinking from fire hose kind of a thing. So they cannot digest most of the sweet drink that they get, and about 90% of them is excreted from them, either as a big bubble, like in the aphids, or spotted lanternfly, they kind of pee, or you, I'm an excrete. So, and it goes all over the tree and it leaves around, but for bees, anything sweet is a treasure. So they go and collect these excretions, and again, they convert it into honey, and we eat another insect's excretion. And
so
it's very sweet.
It's funny. I was at a thing with the Quebec delegation. I don't know. It was a meeting, but I started talking to them about maple syrup, and we were discussing, well, what is syrup of a tree? Like, why does it make? What is syrup? Like, why,
normally, syrup
would you say it's the juice? Someone said it was the juice of the tree.
That is true because, okay, let's think about it this way.
Tree juice.
So when we learn about trees or plants, the leaves, they have chlorophylls on them. So those are the only ones that can do photosynthesis. So those are the only ones they can convert the light energy and collect the carbon dioxide from the air, and then they make it glucose out of it, which is the sugar. So, but the roots, they don't do any photosynthesis, but the roots also need these nutritious product. So the trees, from their leaves down to the trunk and then to the root, they transfer this liquid, this glucose in sugar. So that's why it's a very thick sugar syrup. So that is the sap or phloem. So that sap is transferred from phloem.
Phloem? Okay.
Yeah, not phlegm, phloem.
Oh,
like Phloem.
Okay.
Maybe they sound similar. So phloem.
All plants. All plants?
Yeah, almost all the plants who does photosynthesis from the leaves to the roots, that transfer is happening. So because it's a very nutritious, rich in sugar. So the roots get their nutrition from those or energy from those, and they keep growing. So some of the insects, they interfere or they just like poke into it, and then same thing for maple syrup or same thing for rubber plant. So basically you make a cut and then the rubber oozes. Or for maple syrup, you made a cut and the syrup oozes. So some plants, because of the secondary metabolites that they produce due to their genes or due to their environment and so forth, so these become rich in other components. So that's how the molasses or that's how the syrup is coming. So again, for example, spotted lanternfly, they go to the black walnut trees. They go to the tree of heaven and maples. So they do the same thing. They poke them and they drink the syrup or the sap from those plants. And it is something in the nature of the plants. So they do this transfer for the life of the plant.
Wow. Well, this is awesome. Thank you very much.